I ruined my sister's wedding with geese. Not metaphorical geese. Not inflatable lawn decoration geese. Real, living, hissing, feathered demons with wings and orange beaks, the kind of animals you see in a park and think, wow, majestic, right before they chase you into traffic. 2 of them. On leashes. Wearing bow ties. And yes, I walked them into the wedding reception like I was bringing the holy grail of entertainment. Now, in my defense, I didn't wake up that morning thinking, how can I destroy the single most important day of my sister's life? I actually had the opposite thought, how do I show up, behave, and prove I can be responsible for once? See, my new brother-in-law had pulled me aside a week earlier and basically begged me, please, just be normal. No experiments. No surprises. Just sit quietly, eat your food, clap politely, and don't make yourself the center of attention. And I swear to you, I heard that, I internalized it, and then I walked straight into the world's dumbest decision. Because that same morning, I ran into my old buddy Igor, who works at the city petting zoo, and he looked like a man on the edge. He said the lock on the goose enclosure broke, he had to deal with repairs, and he needed someone to hold onto these 2 geese for a few hours. And instead of saying, sorry, man, I have to go to a wedding, my brain went, wait, aren't weddings stressful? Don't people hire therapy dogs to calm down brides and grooms? Why not therapy geese? Imagine the headlines, local hero saves couple's nerves with wholesome feathered companions. So I said yes. I took the geese. I put them on leashes. I tied tiny bells around their necks for extra charm, because in my mind that made them festive, not dangerous, and then I suited up, looked in the mirror, and told myself, you, my friend, are about to become a legend. Walking into the venue, I swear it felt cinematic. The doors opened, sunlight hit the marble floor, and there I was in my suit with 2 geese marching proudly at my sides. Heads turned. Guests gasped. Phones came out immediately. Someone clapped. Even the wedding planner froze, clutching her tablet like it was a crucifix, and asked me, sir, what are those? And I said, with full confidence, emotional support animals for the groom. Totally safe. Very quiet. Very respectful. They know etiquette. Right on cue, 1 goose honked so loud the chandeliers vibrated. Guests laughed nervously. I shrugged. See? They're just saying congratulations. Across the room, my future brother-in-law locked eyes with me. His expression was pure horror, like he was watching his retirement fund vanish in slow motion. He mouthed, what the hell is that? I gave him a thumbs up, because obviously nothing reassures a groom on his wedding day like his future brother-in-law parading geese through the ceremony. And let me tell you, for the first 5 minutes, I actually thought it was going well. The birds were calm, people were curious, kids were delighted, and even a few guests said things like, oh, that's so unique, and I've never seen anything like this at a wedding before, which I took as compliments, not warnings. But then the geese spotted the wedding cake. This 4-tier, pearl-white, strawberry-frosted masterpiece sitting on its own little pedestal like a trophy from heaven. The birds locked on like heat-seeking missiles. Their necks stretched. Their bells jingled with each step. I yanked on the leashes just in time, grinning like it was part of a performance, but in my heart I knew I had just entered dangerous territory. And then the ceremony began. The music played, the bride walked in glowing, everyone stood and clapped, and for one beautiful second I thought maybe, just maybe, the geese would behave. But no. The officiant asked for silence, the groom took a deep breath, and at that exact moment, both geese let out a synchronized honk so deep and powerful it echoed like foghorns in a harbor. People jumped. My aunt screamed. My dad muttered something about me being adopted. I panicked and whispered, strong wind, to the guest beside me, and she gave me a look like, buddy, we're indoors. Phones started recording, kids were laughing, my sister hadn't noticed yet because she was busy crying happy tears, and I actually convinced myself I could still turn this around. I thought if I kept them calm, if I played it cool, if I acted like this was all part of the plan, then one day my sister would laugh about her magical, goose-enhanced wedding. Spoiler, she did not laugh. The ceremony should have been romantic, touching, Pinterest perfect, but instead it sounded like someone had smuggled 2 air horns into a church. Every time the officiant paused for dramatic effect, the geese filled the silence with honks that could probably be heard 3 towns over. People were biting their lips trying not to laugh, some kids were openly imitating the birds, and my dad kept muttering under his breath like he was negotiating with higher powers to just strike me down where I stood. The groom's face was turning red, not in a sweet emotional way but in a this marriage might actually be annulled today kind of way, and I tried everything to keep the geese distracted. I pulled lettuce leaves out of my pocket like some kind of desperate magician, waving them around as brides, and for a few blessed minutes it worked. The geese chewed angrily, feathers ruffled, but at least they were quiet. My sister said her vows, the groom stumbled through his, and just as I started thinking we might actually make it out alive, the photographer spotted me. You know the type, one of those ambitious, overexcited guys who's constantly chasing the shot. His eyes locked on the geese like he'd just discovered the golden ticket. We have to get the birds in the photos, he whispered like it was divine inspiration. The groom hissed, no, absolutely not, this is not happening, but the photographer was already rearranging people like chess pieces. It'll be iconic, he promised. Nobody will forget these pictures. And he was right, but not in the way he meant. So now it's me, crouching beside my sister and her new husband, both of them looking gorgeous and glowing, and next to us 2 giant geese glaring at the camera like they've just been asked to file taxes. The photographer counts down 1, 2, 3, and on 3, one goose decides my suit jacket looks like a snack. It stretches its long, hateful neck and bites me right in the ribs. I yelp, stumble, my face contorts into an expression halfway between agony and constipation, and the photographer captures it forever. Click. My sister gasps. The groom groans. And then the second goose, not wanting to be left out, throws its head back and unleashes the most ungodly honk I have ever heard in my life. It's like the mating call of a dying foghorn. The speakers screech with feedback. Children cry. Someone drops a glass of champagne. My cousin spits out his drink from laughing too hard. And the photographer? He's clicking like mad, convinced this is the stuff of legend. Goose feathers start floating down because apparently one of them decided flapping was necessary, and they land delicately on my sister's hair, which had taken 3 hours of professional styling. Her face freezes. Not a smile. Not anger yet. Just the kind of expression you see in documentaries about volcanoes seconds before eruption. I try to salvage it. They're just adding character to the photos, I stammer, and my mom marches over, rips the leashes out of my hands, and hisses, sit down. Don't move. Don't speak. Don't even breathe. And I actually obeyed. For about 20 minutes I sat there silently, sweating, clutching my side where I'd been bitten, watching my sister's perfect day wobble on the edge of disaster. But then came the reception. If the ceremony was chaos, the reception was full-blown war. The second the buffet opened, the geese saw their chance. They lunged forward with the kind of speed you'd expect from Olympic sprinters. I held the leashes as tight as I could, but honestly, these birds were stronger than me. One of them bolted straight toward the appetizer table, wings half spread, bells jingling like some kind of demented sleigh ride. Guests screamed and jumped back as plates went flying. Aunt Valentina, bless her heart, thought this was hilarious and tried to hand-feed one of them a canopy. The goose snatched the entire plate out of her hand and ran off like it had just robbed a convenience store. Meanwhile the second goose dove headfirst into the vegetable display, and I swear to you I watched an entire bowl of Brussels sprouts vanish in less than 30 seconds. Absolute massacre. Guests were gasping, laughing, recording everything. One guy yelled, "Best wedding ever." And people actually cheered. Phones were everywhere. For a fleeting second, it looked like maybe this had become a comedy show instead of a disaster. But the groom's face told the truth. He looked like a man who had just realized his happily ever after came with in-laws from a circus. My sister stormed over, her smile glued on for the cameras but her voice pure venom. "Fix this," she hissed. "Fix this now or I swear you'll never see me again." And in that moment, I did what I always do when I'm way over my head. I lied to myself. I thought, okay, no problem, I can fix this. All I need is a plan. Spoiler, my plan was about to make everything 1,000 times worse. So here I am at the reception, standing in the middle of a war zone where geese are treating the buffet like it's a Black Friday sale. My sister is whisper yelling death threats through her forced bridal smile, and the groom looks like he's aged 10 years in 30 minutes. I keep telling myself I can fix this, that all I need is one smart move, one clever idea, one miracle to turn the tide. And then, as if on cue, the DJ announces the first dance. The lights dim, the music softens, everyone turns toward the dance floor, and my sister and her new husband take their place. It's the big romantic moment, the one people post on Instagram with captions like, "True love exists." And me? I'm clutching two geese who are vibrating with nervous energy like ticking bombs. My brain screams at me to stay out of it, but then I see Uncle Petya sneaking over with a fistful of confetti. He's grinning like a kid about to throw candy into a crowd, and before I can stop him he tosses the confetti right over the geese, thinking it'll be festive. Wrong. So wrong. One goose explodes upward like it just got hit with lightning. Wings spread wide, bells jangling, feathers shooting into the air like snow. The other goose joins in, flapping furiously, honking in rhythm with the music like it's part of the performance. Suddenly the first dance is no longer a romantic waltz. It's Swan Lake if the swans had rabies. Guests cheer. Phones record. People are laughing, clapping, shouting encore, while my sister's veil gets yanked sideways by a rogue wing. The groom tries to dip her gracefully and almost gets decapitated by a flapping neck. I rush forward, trying to reel the geese back like some kind of disaster cowboy, but one of them spins around me in a circle and I end up tangling myself in the leashes. Now I'm being dragged across the dance floor like a clumsy matador, everyone is howling with laughter, and the photographer is snapping away like he's covering the Olympics. The music keeps playing, but the scene is pure chaos, bride screaming, groom swearing, me spinning like a human top, geese honking like emergency sirens. And yet, half the guests are eating it up. Aunt Valentina is literally crying from laughing too hard, yelling, "Best wedding ever," and clinking her champagne glass. Kids are jumping up and down, chanting geese. Geese. Geese, as if they're cheering for mascots at a football game. The DJ, bless his clueless soul, leans into it by switching the music to something upbeat, so now the first dance is happening to disco while I'm being strangled by leashes. Eventually I crash into a table, knocking over a tower of mini cheesecakes. One goose immediately pounces on the wreckage like it's won the lottery. The other goose stands triumphantly on top of the fallen tablecloth, wings outstretched, feathers everywhere, like some kind of gladiator who just conquered Rome. And in the middle of this pandemonium, the groom yells at me, "What the hell is wrong with you? My instinctive response? They're just excited about true love. Which, spoiler, did not calm him down. My sister grabs me by the collar, yanks me close, and whispers through clenched teeth, "If you don't get rid of those birds in the next 5 minutes, I swear I'll feed you to them." Meanwhile, the photographer is practically on the floor from excitement, muttering, "This is genius. Iconic. Viral content. You'll thank me later." He's snapping away while goose number 2 tries to pull an entire roast chicken off the carving station. And that's when it happens. The moment that will haunt me for the rest of my life. Out of nowhere, goose number 1 lunges toward the wedding cake again. Remember, this thing is a 4-tier masterpiece, the crown jewel of the reception, carefully crafted to survive exactly 0 goose attacks. The bird stretches, I pull back on the leash, people gasp, and suddenly my foot slips on a fallen cheesecake. Time slows. I stumble forward, the leash yanks hard, and like a tragic domino effect, my hand slams into the cake table. The cake tilts. Gasps fill the room. The cake starts falling in slow motion, and all I can think is, no, not like this. It sails through the air, spinning, elegant, tragic, and lands directly on Aunt Valentina. Frosting everywhere. Her hair, her dress, her jewelry, her soul, completely covered in buttercream. The room is silent for exactly 2 seconds, then explodes into chaos. Some people scream, some people laugh hysterically, kids are chanting cake fight. Cake fight. And my sister looks like she's about to commit a felony. I try to help by saying, it could have been worse, which, spoiler, was not the right thing to say. Because immediately after those words left my mouth, goose number 2 climbed onto the ruined cake and started eating it directly off Aunt Valentina's lap like it was part of the buffet. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the exact moment I realized I wasn't fixing anything. I was just the villain in a live-action cartoon. The second the cake hit Aunt Valentina, I knew I was doomed, because weddings can survive bad speeches, they can survive awkward uncles, but they do not survive Cake-Mageddon, especially when that cake is now sliding down the sequined dress of a 60-year-old woman who already thinks I'm a disgrace to the family. She stood there dripping in frosting, blinking slowly like a villain in a soap opera about to announce vengeance, while everyone else tried to decide whether to laugh or cry. And before I could even move, goose number 2 jumped straight onto her lap and started devouring cake like it was at an all-you-can-eat buffet. I lunged forward to pull it away but slipped again, crashed into a chair, and by the time I got back up, goose number 1 had joined the party. Now both birds were fighting each other for frosting rights while my aunt screeched like she was being murdered. Guests were screaming, kids were chanting goose fight. Goose fight. And the DJ, clearly not reading the room, switched the music to something dramatic, so now the soundtrack to this disaster was the theme from Rocky. I yanked on the leashes, tried to separate them, but the birds had the strength of bodybuilders and the stubbornness of demons. Meanwhile, my sister's face had gone beyond anger into the scary calm zone, like she was plotting where to hide my body. The groom had frosting on his shoes, the photographer was still snapping photos like he was covering the apocalypse for National Geographic, and my dad muttered something about disowning me legally this time. Finally, I managed to drag the geese off Aunt Valentina, who was now covered head to toe in icing, cherries, and what was left of the cake topper. She looked at me with pure hatred and hissed, "This isn't over." Which, honestly, sounded less like a complaint and more like a death sentence. I tried to lighten the mood by saying, "At least you smell like vanilla now," but judging by the look on her face, that joke shortened my lifespan by about 20 years. I thought maybe I could spin this as a quirky memory, like remember when Geese made the wedding unforgettable, but the bride did not look like she was in a mood for quirky memories. She dragged me into the back room, slammed the door, and gave me the kind of whispered rage that could shatter glass. "You were supposed to behave. You were supposed to sit quietly. And instead you brought geese. Real geese. Who just destroyed my cake. Do you understand what you've done?" And like an idiot, I said, "Technically, it was only one goose that destroyed the cake, the other one just assisted." She nearly strangled me right there. The groom sat in the corner rubbing his temples like a man who'd just aged into retirement. My mom was pacing, my dad was sighing, and the geese were just standing there like innocent angels, as if they hadn't just ruined everything. I promised I'd fix it. I swore I had a plan. And everyone stared at me like I'd just confessed to arson. My sister said, "You can't fix this. There's no fixing this." But my brain, in full panic mode, decided that if I doubled down, maybe I could turn disaster into entertainment. So I walked back out to the guests, stood on a chair with frosting still on my shoes, and announced loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, don't worry, the geese are part of a performance piece. This is art. This is immersive theater. You've just witnessed Act 1. People clapped. They actually clapped. Some guests cheered, thinking it was intentional, because weddings bring out the best in people's gullibility. And for one brief second, I thought I might have actually saved myself. But then goose number 1 spotted the dessert table where dozens of small pastries were neatly arranged as backups. And before I could blink, it broke free, sprinted across the floor like a missile, and launched itself directly into the mountain of profiteroles. Cream exploded everywhere. Guests gasped. Someone yelled, "Incoming," like we were under attack. Goose number 2, not wanting to be left behind, charged after its partner, and within 30 seconds both of them were rolling around in custard like toddlers in a sandbox. The photographer fell to his knees from laughter. My uncle filmed the whole thing while wheezing like he was going to pass out, and the bride's scream could probably be heard in neighboring cities. I tried to wrangle them again, slipping and sliding in cream, grabbing feathers, apologizing left and right, but every time I thought I had control, one of them slipped out and stole another dessert. By the time I dragged them back to the corner, the dessert table was gone, my suit was ruined, and the entire wedding had officially transformed from elegant celebration to live-action Looney Tunes episode starring me as the villain. And still, some guests were chanting encore. Encore. Like they genuinely wanted more. And that's when I realized something terrifying. The night wasn't even halfway over. By the time I got the geese chained to a decorative column in the corner, I was sweating like I'd just run a marathon through a bakery, my suit looked like it had fought a pastry chef and lost, and my sister was giving me that silent death stare that says more than words ever could. She didn't even have to yell anymore, the promise of murder was in her eyes. The groom refused to look at me at all, which honestly felt worse than yelling because his quiet rage radiated across the room like a second lighting fixture. I kept telling myself if I could just survive until the dinner toasts, maybe I could spin the whole thing into a funny anecdote. Weddings always have stories, right? Oh, remember when Uncle Jim tripped during the vows? Remember when the ring bearer fell asleep on stage? This would just be the goose story. Maybe in 10 years they'd laugh. That was my thought. But then came the toasts. The best man got up, cracked some jokes, people laughed, everything was smooth. My mom gave a heartfelt speech about love and family, people teared up, clinked glasses. Then I got it in my head that I should also speak. Me. The man who had already caused what was essentially an avian terrorist attack on a wedding. I figured if I grabbed the mic and owned the moment, I could win back some dignity. Big mistake. Huge. I stood up, tapped the microphone, and said, "Love is like geese." The room froze. Everyone braced. My dad buried his face in his hands again. I could feel the groom's soul leaving his body. But I doubled down because that's what I do. Yes, love is like geese, I continued. Sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's messy, sometimes it bites you when you least expect it. But at the end of the day, it always comes back. A few people chuckled. I thought, okay, maybe this is working. Maybe I'm a genius. And then goose number 1 waddled up right beside me, stuck its beak directly into the microphone, and unleashed a honk so loud it rattled the speakers and nearly deafened 3 children in the front row. The entire sound system squealed in feedback, people clapped their hands over their ears, and goose number 2, not to be outdone, waddled up and honked again like it was a duet. The DJ tried to cut the mic, but by then the damage was done. Guests were laughing hysterically. Some people cheered and raised their glasses shouting to the geese, and suddenly half the reception was chanting like they were mascots. And because weddings are weird, some people actually loved it. They thought it was planned entertainment. They thought I was some kind of genius prankster. I looked at my sister who was gripping her wine glass so tight I thought it might shatter, and I realized she did not find it charming. The groom leaned over to me and hissed, "If you don't get those things out of here in 5 minutes, I'm calling animal control." Meanwhile, goose number 1 strutted around like it owned the place, knocking over empty glasses with its wings, while goose number 2 discovered the champagne fountain. Yes, there was a literal champagne fountain. Yes, the goose dunked its head in and started drinking. People lost their minds. Half the guests were howling with laughter, the other half looked horrified, and I was frozen because apparently geese can get tipsy very fast. Within minutes, that bird was wobbling around the dance floor like your drunk uncle at 2 a.m., honking out of rhythm with the music. At this point even the band stopped playing and just watched, because what else do you do when you see a tipsy goose trying to waltz with the bride? My sister finally snapped. She stormed over, grabbed me by the collar, and hissed, "Get them out." And because panic makes me stupid, I said, "What if I just take them outside for fresh air?" She said, "If you're not out that door in 30 seconds, you're dead." So I grabbed the leashes, wrestled the birds toward the exit, and tried to discreetly sneak them out. But of course, nothing about 2 giant geese being dragged through a wedding is discreet. They squawked, they flapped, they resisted, bells jingling like the soundtrack to my humiliation. One knocked over a centerpiece, the other knocked over the guest book table, and by the time I got them outside into the night air, half the reception was recording me like I was some viral street performer. Outside, I thought maybe I could tie them to a bench and sneak back in like nothing happened. But when I tried, goose number 1 bit me so hard I yelped and dropped the leash. And that's how I found myself chasing a goose in a full suit across the parking lot while guests watched from the windows. And yes, goose number 2 broke free too. So now I'm sprinting after 2 drunk, bell-wearing, frosting-covered geese through the dark like some kind of cursed Disney movie, praying they don't head for the street. Spoiler, they did. So now imagine me, in a suit that already smells like frosting, champagne, and regret, sprinting through a parking lot after 2 geese that have completely lost their minds. Guests are lined up at the windows like it's dinner theater, some cheering, some filming, and I'm chasing these birds while they honk like sirens and flap like helicopters. One goose heads straight for a car, slams its beak into the shiny bumper, and for reasons I cannot explain starts attacking its own reflection. The other goose finds a puddle and decides this is now its personal spa, splashing around like it owns the place. I lunge for the leashes, slip, nearly faceplant into the asphalt, and by the time I scramble up, both birds are heading for the street like they've decided to hitchhike out of town. I finally manage to grab one by the leash, dragging it back while it fights like a medieval dragon. Meanwhile, the other charges directly into traffic. Yes, traffic. Cars are slowing down, honks are blaring, people are swerving, and there's me in a suit running into the road screaming I'm sorry while trying to wrangle a giant goose. Drivers are honking their horns, the goose is honking back, and it's basically a full-scale honk war. Somehow, by sheer dumb luck, I managed to grab it before disaster strikes, but not before my entire extended family has gathered at the doors of the venue watching me like I'm the halftime show at a circus. I drag both geese back inside, covered in mud, panting like a dying dog, and everyone claps sarcastically like I've just finished a performance piece. The bride does not clap. The groom does not clap. My mother looks like she wants to evaporate. My dad says out loud, this is why we never trusted him with pets. And right then, the DJ announces the bouquet toss. I try to sneak the geese back to their corner, thinking maybe they'll calm down, but the second my sister throws the bouquet into the crowd, one goose launches itself like a missile, leaps into the air, and snatches the bouquet mid-flight. The entire room screams. A bridesmaid bursts into tears. The goose struts proudly around with flowers dangling from its beak like it's just been proposed to, while the other goose chases it in circles honking furiously. The DJ is laughing so hard he nearly falls off his booth, people are doubled over, and my sister looks like she might actually kill me with her bare hands. I rush forward to grab the bouquet back, trip over a chair, crash into a waiter carrying champagne, and suddenly there's glass shattering, people slipping, more screaming. Goose number 2 jumps onto the spilled champagne like it's a slip and slide, skidding across the floor straight into the groom's legs. He topples backward, the bride topples forward, and the entire reception goes into chaos again. The groom stands up drenched in champagne and frosting, stares at me with murder in his eyes, and says, "You are never invited to anything ever again." And the guests? Half are horrified, half are delighted. Some aunt in the back yells, "This is the best wedding I've ever been to," and people cheer again. My sister storms over, bouquet still dangling from the goose's beak, and hisses, "I want them gone. I want them out. I don't care how. Fix this." And I, still trying to cling to any hope of redemption, nod and say, okay, I'll handle it. My brain is fried, my body hurts, my pride is dead, but I grab the geese by the leashes, drag them outside again, and promise myself this time I'll actually get rid of them. Except, standing outside in the dark parking lot with 2 furious geese on ropes, I realize I have no idea what get rid of them even means. I can't just release them into the city like some kind of feathered Batman villains. I can't kill them, obviously, even though Aunt Valentina probably would at this point. And I can't bring them back inside. So I'm stuck, sweating, pacing, muttering, while the geese honk at me like drill sergeants. And then my old buddy Igor finally calls me back. The same Igor who dumped these birds on me in the first place. I pick up the phone and scream, "Where are you?" And he casually says, "Oh man, sorry, got delayed. I can come pick them up in like 2 hours. 2 hours. The wedding is already in shambles. My sister is ready to declare me legally dead. And now I'm supposed to babysit these demons for another 2 hours. I look up at the glowing windows of the reception hall, hear the muffled music, see the silhouettes of people still dancing and laughing, and realize that if I go back in with the geese, it's over. But if I don't, the geese might actually break free and destroy the city. I had to make a choice, and like always, I chose the worst possible option. So I'm standing outside in the parking lot with 2 geese who look like they're plotting my downfall, covered in frosting and champagne, wondering how my life turned into a low-budget slapstick movie, when my phone buzzes again. It's my mom texting me in all caps, "Where are you? Come back inside." People are asking questions. And because I am an idiot, I decide the best way to avoid suspicion is to bring the geese back in quietly and keep them leashed near me until Igor shows up. Yes, after everything that had already happened, I thought sneaking them back into the reception would somehow be fine. I drag them through the side door, trying to act casual, like walking giant birds through a wedding is normal. People immediately notice. Guests point. Some start cheering, others groan. My sister spots me from across the room and mouths something I can't repeat without violating community guidelines. But before she can cross the room to murder me, the DJ announces it's time for the garter toss. Everyone crowds around, people are laughing, the groom sits in the chair, the bride pulls up her dress a little, and it's supposed to be this lighthearted, flirty tradition. Except my geese take one look at the garter flying through the air and decide it's theirs. Both launch forward at the exact same time. One goose grabs the garter in midair with its beak, the other goose tackles a groomsman trying to catch it. Suddenly there's a full-on tug-of-war between a 6-foot-tall guy in a suit and a furious goose, while the other goose struts around with the garter hanging from its mouth like it just won the Super Bowl. People are howling with laughter, guests are doubled over, some are chanting goose. Goose. Goose, and the photographer is basically in tears from snapping so many shots. My sister's smile looks like it's carved from stone. The groom tries to intervene, but goose number 2 flaps its wings and smacks him straight in the face, knocking his boutonniere off. The entire crowd gasps, then bursts out laughing, except the bride and groom, who now both look like they regret ever meeting me. I finally wrestle the garter out of the goose's beak, toss it back into the crowd, and drag the birds into the corner again, swearing to myself this is the last time, absolutely the last time I let them out of my sight. And then, like some kind of cruel cosmic joke, the band starts playing the opening chords of a fast song, and people flood the dance floor. Now, if you don't know this about geese, let me educate you. Loud music and flashing lights do not calm them down. They go berserk. Both of them start honking in rhythm with the beat, flapping their wings like deranged backup dancers. At first, the crowd loves it. They cheer, they film, someone yells, "This is amazing," and it looks like the geese are literally part of the entertainment. But then the strobe lights hit, and goose number 1 freaks out, bolts across the floor, and knocks over a table full of drinks. Bottles smash, liquid everywhere, people jump back screaming, and goose number 2 follows right behind, sliding through the spilled beer like it's playing ice hockey. Guests are slipping, drinks are flying, and the dance floor looks like a war zone. The DJ desperately tries to cut the music, but goose number 1 leaps onto his booth, honks directly into his microphone, and blasts the sound system with ear-splitting feedback that nearly blows out everyone's eardrums. People cover their ears, kids scream, the bride shouts my name at full volume, and I realize I might actually cause a riot. I rush forward, slip in the spilled beer, crash into a bridesmaid, and end up tangled in a pile of streamers while the geese are still wreaking havoc. By the time I finally crawl back up and get the leashes under control, half the decorations are ruined, 3 guests are covered in alcohol, and the DJ is threatening to quit on the spot. My sister storms over, mascara smeared, hair frazzled, looking like she's aged 10 years in one night. She grabs me by the lapels, shakes me, and screams, "Get them out now. I don't care if you have to drive them to another country. Just get them away from me." And I try to explain Igor is coming in less than 2 hours, but she doesn't want to hear it. The groom points to the door like a judge sentencing me to exile, and I know this is it, my final warning, my last chance to salvage any dignity. I nod, swear I'll handle it, and drag the geese back outside into the cool night air. And just when I think maybe, just maybe, things can't possibly get worse, a squad car pulls into the parking lot. Yes. The neighbors had called the cops about disturbances involving large birds. And now I'm standing there with 2 frosting-covered, champagne-drenched geese on leashes while a police officer rolls down his window and says, "Sir, what the hell is going on here?" So there I am, outside the venue with frosting all over my suit, my tie hanging sideways, holding 2 geese that look like they just survived a food fight in a bakery, when a police cruiser pulls up and an officer rolls down his window with the most confused expression I've ever seen. "Sir, we got a call about disturbances," he says slowly, scanning the scene. "Are those geese?" I nod like this is the most normal thing in the world and mutter, "Yes, officer, emotional support animals for the wedding." He stares at me for a solid 10 seconds, dead silent, before finally asking, "And why are they covered in cake?" I panic and blurt out, "Tradition." The second I say it I realize how insane it sounds, but he just keeps staring, probably running through the mental checklist of whether or not this qualifies as his problem. Meanwhile the geese, apparently not big fans of authority, start honking aggressively at the cop car. One even pecks at the tire like it's trying to deflate it. The officer sighs, gets out of the car, and asks me to step aside. I'm sweating buckets, babbling about how I'm handling it, how my friend Igor is on his way, how this isn't technically illegal, right? He asks for my ID. I reach for my wallet, and one goose yanks the corner of it out of my pocket and takes off running across the parking lot. Now the cop and I are both chasing a goose who is literally stealing my identification while the other goose is honking like a hype man in the background. The bird sprints under cars, around bushes, and finally drops the wallet right next to the venue door, where 3 kids scoop it up laughing hysterically. The cop retrieves it, wipes it off, and hands it back to me with this look that screams, "You're the dumbest person I've dealt with all week." Before I can thank him, the doors to the hall burst open and a wave of drunken guests spill outside chanting, "Geese! Geese! Geese!" because apparently the birds have become folk heroes. Someone tries to pet one, it snaps at their sleeve, they laugh and film it, and suddenly there are like 20 people crowding around us like this is some pop-up petting zoo. The cop tells me I need to clear the animals out immediately before they cause more damage. I promise I will. I swear on my life. But then my sister storms out in her dress, mascara running, looking like a Disney princess who's turned into a villain, and she screams at the top of her lungs, "Get them out. Get them off my property. I don't care how." The guests cheer like she's leading a revolution. The cop crosses his arms and says, "You heard her." I drag the geese toward my car, shove them into the back seat, don't ask how, it involved a lot of flapping and a minor bite to the ear, and slam the door shut. Now the birds are pressed against the windows honking at the crowd like they're prisoners protesting injustice. The guests think this is hilarious, they're chanting and clapping, filming on their phones, and one guy even yells, "Set them free," like this is a wildlife documentary. Meanwhile the cop tells me I need to either secure the animals elsewhere or leave the premises entirely. My heart sinks because if I drive away with these things, I have no idea where to take them, but if I stay, I'm probably going to cause a riot. I'm sweating, stammering, begging for time, when goose number 1 suddenly manages to hit the window switch with its beak. The window rolls down. Before I can react, the bird launches itself back into the reception like a feathery missile. The other goose, not to be outdone, follows instantly. Both of them charge straight into the venue through the open doors, honking triumphantly as if they've just staged a successful prison break. The guests roar with laughter, the cop shouts, my sister screams, and I sprint after them like a man possessed. Inside, it's pure chaos. The band is trying to play over the noise, drunk uncles are clapping along, kids are chasing the birds, and the geese have declared open war on the dessert table too. 0, I finally dive onto one, tackling it like a football player, feathers exploding everywhere, guests screaming and cheering, and I hear my dad's voice from across the room yelling, "You're adopted." Which at this point might be true. I've got one goose pin, the other is standing triumphantly on the dance floor honking to the beat of the music, and the bride is in the corner shouting at the groom that this is the worst day of her life. And I realize, as I'm lying on the ground holding down a furious goose while people film me like I'm the halftime show, that there is absolutely no way I'm ever living this down. By the time I hauled that goose off the dance floor, I looked like I had just wrestled a tornado made of feathers and shame. My suit was basically confetti, my tie was gone, my hair had frosting in it, and my sister was standing there shaking with rage like a cartoon character about to blow steam out of her ears. Guests were still laughing, clapping, some even chanting encore, like this was supposed to happen, but the bride was past the point of caring about appearances. She marched across the room, grabbed the microphone out of the band singer's hand, and screamed, "Whoever is cheering for the Geese is no longer invited to my wedding." The room went dead silent for a second and then half the drunk uncles clapped anyway because apparently they thought it was a bit. The groom had frosting on his jacket, champagne on his shoes, and the 1,000-yard stare of a soldier who had seen too much. He walked up to me slowly, calmly, and said, "I'm going to pretend you don't exist for the rest of my life." My mom was trying to calm my sister down, my dad was muttering about boarding schools for adults, and the photographer was still snapping photos like this was the best day of his career. Meanwhile, the geese had not slowed down. Goose number 1 escaped my grip, sprinted across the dance floor, and leapt onto the gift table. Guests screamed as it started pecking at envelopes like it was opening wedding cards. Goose number 2 discovered the open bar and managed to knock an entire bottle of vodka onto the floor. Glass shattered, liquid spread, and a group of college-aged cousins immediately cheered like it was spring break. The DJ, already fed up, just muttered, "Nope," packed up his laptop, and walked out the door. Now there's no music, just honking, screaming, and the occasional sound of glass breaking. My sister was sobbing, clutching her ruined bouquet, makeup streaked down her face, and through her tears she yelled at me, "Do you understand you've ruined the happiest day of my life?" And me, because my survival instincts are broken, I stammered, "Technically, it's memorable." The look she gave me could have turned me to stone. The groom grabbed me by the collar and shoved me toward the door, shouting, "Out. Take them out. Right now." And as if to punctuate the point, goose number 1 picked up an envelope in its beak, shook it violently, and showered the room in cash and checks. Guests scrambled to grab flying money while my aunt shouted, "It's a miracle," and another guest yelled, "Make it rain." My sister collapsed into a chair wailing, the groom was red in the face, and the geese were now local celebrities. People were filming, laughing, screaming, chasing them like paparazzi. I dragged one toward the exit, slipped and spilled vodka, nearly broke my neck, and the goose used my fall as an excuse to break free again. At that exact moment Igor finally texted me, "Hey bro, on my way, be there in 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. My dad cornered me and hissed, "If those birds are not gone by the time he gets here, you're gone." And honestly, I didn't even know what gone meant in his tone, but it sounded like I'd be buried behind the restaurant with the leftover champagne bottles. I tried one last time to gather them both, wrapping the leashes around my arms like some kind of deranged cowboy, but the geese pulled in opposite directions, dragging me through chairs and knocking over another table. Guests were laughing again, the photographer was shouting yes. Yes. This is gold, and my mom just covered her eyes. Finally, the groom stormed into the kitchen, came back with a broom, and declared, "I will end this myself." My sister, sobbing, screamed, "Don't you dare hurt them, they're animals," and then turned back to me and screamed, "But I'll hurt you." Guests were divided, half siding with me, half booing me, all of them drunk enough to think this was performance art. And standing there in the middle of the wreckage, holding 2 furious geese who were now hissing like snakes, I realized there was no fixing this, no redemption, no turning it into a funny story. The breaking point had arrived. The wedding wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a hostage situation run by birds. I was sweating through my ruined suit, gripping the leashes like my life depended on it, when Igor finally burst through the doors of the venue, casual as ever, holding a paper cup of coffee like he was just stopping by for brunch. "Bro," he said, completely unfazed by the feathers, frosting, broken glass, and crying bride around him, "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was crazy." I nearly screamed, "Traffic? Traffic? My entire family wants me dead and you're holding a latte." The geese spotted Igor and lost their minds, honking and flapping like they'd just seen their messiah. They yanked me so hard I slammed into a table, knocking over the remnants of a wine display, while Igor just laughed and said, "Wow, they really bonded with you." Bonded. That's the word he used, like I hadn't just been dragged across the dance floor by birds that nearly caused multiple divorces among guests. My sister bolted upright when she saw him, mascara smeared down her cheeks, her voice hoarse from yelling. "Is this him?" she shrieked, pointing at Igor like he was the final boss of her nightmare. The entire room turned on him instantly, half booing, half cheering, everyone drunk and furious. Igor blinked, sipped his coffee, and said, "What? They're just geese. Chill." My dad nearly exploded. My mom grabbed her head and muttered something about regretting ever having children. The groom actually tried to lunge at Igor, but tripped over a chair leg and ended up face first in a puddle of spilled champagne. Guests howled with laughter. Someone shouted, 10 out of 10 dive, like this was a sporting event. Meanwhile Igor finally strolls over to take the leashes from me, but of course, the geese weren't going quietly. Oh no. The moment he grabbed them, goose number 1 broke free completely and charged directly into the middle of the dance floor, wings spread like an avenging angel. Goose number 2 followed immediately, honking with the intensity of a fire alarm. And suddenly the crowd of guests joined in, cheering, clapping, chanting "Goose Show." Goose Show, like this was Vegas. People actually started tossing pieces of bread and snacks onto the floor like they were feeding animals at a petting zoo. My sister screamed so loud the chandeliers rattled, and Igor just stood there nodding like, yeah, they're in good shape. Goose number 1 snatched a croissant out of a guest's hand and strutted proudly across the floor. Goose number 2 discovered the stage, hopped up onto it, and honked directly into the microphone so loud the speakers nearly blew. Feedback shrieked, kids screamed, guests laughed until they cried, and the bride completely lost it. She ripped off her veil, threw it on the ground, and shouted, "This is not a wedding. This is a circus." People clapped again like it was a performance. My dad turned to Igor and growled, "Get them out." And Igor, the genius that he is, shrugged and said, "They're kind of hard to move when they get excited." Wrong thing to say. The groom snapped. He grabbed a chair, raised it like he was about to fight for his life in a gladiator arena, and charged at Goose number 1. Guests screamed, people pulled out their phones, and in the chaos Goose number 2 leapt off the stage, flapping directly into the groom's chest. He dropped the chair, fell backward again, and the crowd erupted like it was WWE. My sister was sobbing into her hands, my mom was trying to pray, and my dad just kept repeating, "I don't have a son, I don't have a son," while looking directly at me. Igor finally whistled, somehow got both geese to calm down enough to follow him toward the door, and started leading them out while the entire wedding party booed, cheered, and filmed the walk of shame. And just when I thought maybe, finally, mercifully, it was over, Goose number 1 whipped around at the last second, stretched its neck, and bit my sister's bouquet clean out of her hands. Flowers flew everywhere, petals rained down, and the bird strutted off into the night like it had just won the final round. Guests roared with applause, people were chanting again, and my sister collapsed into the groom's arms crying, "It's ruined, everything's ruined." Igor looked back at me and said cheerfully, "Thanks for watching them, man," as if I just watered his plants, and then disappeared into the darkness with the birds still honking in triumph. The doors shut. Silence fell. Everyone turned to look at me, and in that moment, surrounded by destroyed decorations, empty bottles, frosting stains, crying relatives, and shattered dreams, I realized my life as a member of this family was officially over. The second the doors closed behind Igor and his demon birds, the reception hall fell into the kind of silence you only hear in war movies after the battle ends, when the smoke clears and everyone is just staring at the ruins wondering what went wrong. Tables were overturned, the cake was gone, the gift table looked like it had been looted, half the guests were drunk enough to think they'd just witnessed history, and my sister was sitting on the floor in her wedding dress sobbing into her hands. The groom stood beside her, soaked in champagne, frosting stuck in his hair, staring at me like he was trying to burn me alive with pure rage. My mom was whispering to herself like she was reciting prayers in another dimension. My dad was pacing with his head in his hands muttering, "This boy is not mine, this boy is not mine," and Aunt Valentina, still covered in a faint crust of buttercream, just sipped straight from a bottle of wine while glaring at me like she was plotting a hit. I wanted to say something, anything, to fix it, but my mouth went dry and the only thing that came out was, "At least it's memorable." The collective gasp of hatred that filled the room could have knocked me over. My sister screamed, "Get out," and the groom pointed at the door with a shaking finger like he was sentencing me to death. Guests started booing, some actually throwing napkins at me like I was a failed comedian bombing on stage. I slinked out the side door, frosting on my shoes, feathers still stuck to my jacket, walking into the cool night air knowing I had officially become the villain of my own family. I sat in my car for half an hour listening to muffled chaos inside the hall, hearing bursts of laughter, screams, and at one point what sounded like someone yelling, "Honk honk," as a toast. Finally the night ended, people trickled out, some patting me on the shoulder saying, "That was unforgettable, man," others refusing to even look at me. My sister stormed past without a word, the groom shot me a glare so sharp it could slice metal, and my parents just sighed like they were reconsidering every life choice that led to my existence. The ride home was pure silence except for my phone blowing up with notifications, because apparently videos of the goose chaos were already going viral. By the next morning there were clips all over social media titled things like "Goose Wedding Massacre" and "When You Invite the Wrong Brother to the Reception." People were tagging me, strangers were laughing, and my sister texted me 3 words, "You're dead forever." The groom blocked me on everything. My parents grounded me even though I'm a grown adult. And Aunt Valentina started telling everyone that she has PTSD from being assaulted by cake. Weeks later, people were still talking about it. At work, random co-workers pulled up the video and said, "Wait, dude, is this you?" like I'd become some kind of cursed meme. Family group chat was renamed the Goose Incident, and every time someone wanted to bring me up they just posted a honking emoji. The worst part? Some people actually thought it was funny. Guests kept telling my sister, "Oh, you'll laugh about it one day," but she has sworn she will never forgive me. The groom hasn't spoken a word to me since. My mom refuses to let me near pets. My dad told me I'm banned from handling anything alive at family events, including houseplants. And yet, deep down, I know this story will follow me forever. Every holiday, every birthday, every reunion, someone will whisper, "Remember the geese," and the room will either burst out laughing or fall into angry silence. My sister says I ruined her wedding, but judging by the fact that the videos still circulate online and people still tag me months later, maybe I didn't ruin it, maybe I just made it legendary. Do I regret it? Absolutely. Would I ever do it again? Not in a million years. But will anyone in my family ever have a normal wedding again without thinking of geese and bow ties? Not a chance. And that, unfortunately, is my legacy.